So welcome once again to everyone joining us today to learn about standardizing and controlling best practices in Bitbucket with the Gain Capital and StoneX team. I'd like to introduce everyone on the call. Very quickly, I'm your host, Ryan Spilkin, a digital content producer and evangelist at Adaptavist, but I'm not the interesting part of today's presentation. Today, we have two members of the StoneX team, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you Nishat Rajabali, the Productivity Tools Manager. Hi, Nishat. How are you?
Hi, Ryan. I'm fine. Thank you.
So glad you're here, sir. Nishat, how long have you been with StoneX?
I joined 2 years ago, roughly. At that time, it was only Gain, and then we were taken over by StoneX, which is about 6 months now, right? So about 2 years, all in all.
All right. And how long have you been in your role as tool manager?
About a year and a half now.
Fantastic, fantastic. Also joining us from your team is the one and only Tomasz Braja. Tomasz, thank you so much for being here. How are you today, sir?
Welcome. Hi, I'm fine, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Tomasz, and I am Atlassian specialist at StoneX. Mainly, I'm responsible for our Atlassian stack. So we have Bitbucket, obviously, Jira and Confluence, and today we will show you something related to this tool. Thanks.
Awesome. Tomasz, how long have you been at StoneX?
So I joined over a year ago. Yeah, something like that in 2019 at November. Yeah, exactly.
All right. And roughly how many scripts have you written in that time?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest. I have to check our repository and pull requests, how many pull requests I created, but
Yeah, maybe,
I believe around 50, maybe even more, because not all were pushed to, definitely more, because definitely not all were pushed to our Bitbucket repository.
Ryan, because I then have the pleasure to pull requests, review the pull requests, so I know how much he writes, right? So
yeah, so probably I'm the one of the reason why Nish decided to implement those controls.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is going to be fun. All right, and joining us from the Adaptavist team, we have the inimitable Robert Giddings, who is the product manager for ScriptRunner for Bitbucket. Robert, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Yes, yeah. Excited to be here and do this webinar. So I think StoneX have really got a really great use case of how you can use ScriptRunner for Bitbucket. I think this is really something that we want to show off and show to the rest of the world what you can do with the product really, and how you can use it in the real world kind of thing. So it's really good.
Yeah, awesome, Robert. Can't wait to hear what you got to say. And last but not least, my programming mentor, JP Komu. JP is a rogue Atlassian consultant who's actually in our, who's moved over to our client success department in Adaptavist. JP, how's it going, man?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here and share this amazing journey with everybody. I think, having these use cases like that, having kind of our customers showing off what they can do and help, in the organization implement best practices like the way they've done, I think is going to be a lot of fun for everybody.
JP, do you think we should submit some of the code that you've taught me how to write to Nishat or Tomasz? You think that's a good?
I think they're on another level, but that's just between you and I. I won't tell anybody.
Right on. All right. So as we go through the webinar today, we want to make sure that everyone can hear all right, that you should be hearing it through your computer and your headphones. We also want to make sure that you are all aware that we will be recording, and everyone who's here today will get a recording of today's webinar that you can pause and rewind and reflect on your favorite parts as often as you'd like. If you've got questions, we want to talk about it. We want to find out what you're interested in and how the techniques that the Gain team are using can maybe help you. So drop them in the Q&A or in the chat. We have the wonderful and energetic Andra Dinu on the line, who's going to be watching the chat and the questions, and she'll be feeding those to us. and we want to make sure we address everything. We will also have a Q&A session at the end where we'll invite you to come off mute and talk with the guys. So yeah, if you're having any trouble, let us know. All right. So who's Adaptavist, you might say? Well, we are the creators of ScriptRunner for the Atlassian suite, and we make a host of other apps for Atlassian, Trello, Slack, and more. We're also a solutions partner that works with our clients to ensure that they are experiencing the full benefits of their digital transformation projects through scaled agile and really anything they need help with. And we're here to talk about the changes that Tomasz and Nishat implemented at Gain Capital through the use of ScriptRunner for Bitbucket. So they're going to show you some very specific use cases, but if you know the ScriptRunner suite, you know that it's a pretty versatile tool. So Robert, tell us a little bit about some of the other things that we're going to be able to do with ScriptRunner for Bitbucket.
Yeah, so really, so ScriptRunner for Bitbucket is really your go-to tool when it comes to customizing your Bitbucket instance. It's particularly useful if you're in a regulated environment, because it really allows you to put in all of these sort of controls and different things you need to put into your development workflow to really make sure that your developers are following best practices, which is kind of where the guys from StoneX are going to really sort of delve into how they have set up their development instance and their development workflow using ScriptRunner for Bitbucket. As the complete tool set, it basically allows you to customize and automate and extend your Bitbucket instance to your heart's content, really. And you can basically enforce everything to do with security and compliance. As I say, if you're in a regulated environment, then this is really a tool that you should be interested in. And I hope there's quite a few of you probably are from a regulated environment. You can also customize the Bitbucket UI and stuff. And also ScriptRunner for Bitbucket, it comes with its own built-in scripts. We've got over 40 of them in the product. So you've got one-off scripts that you can run one-off actions with, but you've got jobs, event listeners, pre-hooks and post-hooks and merge checks. So everything basically to hook into your development workflow and improve your development workflow within Bitbucket. So that's really a ScriptRunner for Bitbucket in a nutshell.
All right. And you know that we are big fans of the built-in script here at JP and I are big fans of the built-in script. We always tell our developers in training, just use them, get started with those, right? They'll give you a start. So now on to the fun stuff. Gain Capital and StoneX. Nishat, tell us this story. Tell us what happened here.
So as I said, I joined obviously when Gain was Gain on its own, and 6 months ago we were taken over or merged into StoneX. So we service, or we look after mostly, at least on the Gain side, the retail customers, and StoneX is also mostly institutional customers. But now combined, we service both, right? Institutional and retail clients. And as you can see, the number is 130,000 plus. So it's a huge client base. And then we got two brands, forex.com and City Index. This is the City Index from the UK side, and we trade CFDs, for example. And as I said, I joined about 2 years ago.
All right, so StoneX serves institutional investing, yes?
Mostly, yes. Yeah, they're much stronger in that area. Yeah.
So and you guys are all in on. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Gain, mostly the focus was retail, but also we serve institutional. But now as a combined company, we are much stronger now in both, fronts.
B2B and B2C. So now that you're fully embedded in institutional trading, you guys are all in on GameStop, right?
Yeah. I wish. Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about your team.
Right. So I, as I said, I became a manager about a year and a half ago. So I used to own all the tools you can see below: Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket, right? So I came in as a build engineer, config manager, and I used to look after Team City, TFS, manage GitHub and all the kind of tools, the continuous integration tools. So I was much more attached to the developer teams directly. And then about a year and a half ago, opportunity came where I was told you want to look after Bitbucket. Sorry, it was only Jira and Confluence at that time, and I obviously jumped to the opportunity because at that point because of changes in managers and all that. So Jira and Confluence were orphaned a bit, right? There was no one owner looking after them. So naturally, because I was owning Team City and all the other stuff, it came to me, right? So about a year and a half ago, we created a new team. So this is about, productivity tools team. And then we got Tom, obviously, and Lukas, who's also part of my team. And we just never look back, right? We have been on a journey, and it's been very interesting. And then obviously we started with Bitbucket, this was about a year ago. And for Bitbucket, we did everything right from the word go, right? Hence the controls, right? I think that's partly defines me, either you do it right or you don't do it, right? I'm on the first step, right? So make sure things are properly done.
Yeah, and it's so cool. You service a lot of people. You're working with 150 plus developers on a whole lot of teams. Yeah, so you got a lot of business happening in those teams every day, and you got to ensure a level of quality. So let's talk about the DevOps best practices that you've actually implemented and why they're so important. What were the first best practices that you implemented? Tell us about why you needed this set of best practices.
Yeah, so I think just stepping back, I mean, I've been working in this industry, doing build stuff and, version control for about 10 years, right? So I've seen everything, and the biggest bug for me was comments in your commits, where you don't see any commits message at all, or funny enough, some people just put 3 dots, and I don't know how that is better than not having a commit message, right? So I think it kind of comes from there, right? So hence, with Bitbucket, we wanted to make sure that we do it properly, right? And one of the first controls was putting a minimum limit to the commit message length, which is 15 as we have it. And that wasn't an arbitrary. We thought about it, and because we also include the Jira ID, which we mentioned, then that kind of is quite a small number of charge, right, for developers. So, we did want to make sure that there's no pushback, right? So at least there is some comments to put in. But that was one of the first one. And then obviously we had the binaries control and the large files control. So these kind of 3 were top of our mind at the time.
So give us the horror stories for a second. Let's talk about some of the things that you were seeing that were, let's get into a little more depth about the problems and why, as they added up, controls needed to be implemented.
Yeah, so I'll just send and I'll give it to Tom. I think he can explain this better. But for me, it was mostly the commit message, and it was bugging me. As I said, I do things right, 100%. And so when I used to see that, because we have got other tools, because we are migrating from TFS and GitHub into Bitbucket, so I try a lot of scripts to grab the history so we can see who's committing. And it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's quite revealing what people, what kind of messages they put in, right? So I think Tom can elaborate on this further.
Sure. So as Nish mentioned, yes. So the first problem, the first bad practice is that people usually do not put commit message when they commit changes. And this is really not helpful for especially for persons who review the code, who review the changes, right? So the first control in our case was the check, which checks the commit message length. And in our case, this commit message cannot be shorter than 15 characters. If it's shortened, your commit is rejected, and this pre-hook displays the information like which commit was rejected, and additionally it returns a link to a Confluence page with a documentation that shows how to fix this problem. Second one is that people usually do not put Jira ID inside the commit message. So when we fix the problem with no commit message inside the for the commits, we notice that people usually do not put the Jira ID inside this message, and this is very useful because, as you probably know, Bitbucket creates kind of link between Jira ticket and the commit every time when you put the valid Jira ticket ID inside commit message. So this is really helpful to track your changes. Unfortunately, people don't do this. So we decided to implement this this kind of control, which checks if your commit message contains the Jira ID at the beginning. And the last one is that people usually push everything to Git repository. Includes the binaries, and as you probably know, binaries increase disk space consumption, and this additionally increases your Git clone time. So the cloning repository takes more time. So we decided to implement such a control, and I believe is one of the most important currently, especially nowadays, because all our developers work remotely from home. So it's nice to keep your repository size as small as possible, and that's basically all about the best practices. So maybe let's talk about something about best practices.
Yeah, let's take a look at the actual controls that you implemented. This is
Okay.
the sidebar that we're seeing on this slide is a screenshot from your Confluence, yeah?
Yes, this is a screenshot from our Confluence page, and as you can see, we have well documented all controls, and there is a reason. We will talk more about this later. But first, why we decided to implement those controls. So basically, we were in the place when we deployed Bitbucket in our company. So we decided to move all code from other source control software to our Bitbucket. And this was perfect moment to implement this kind of controls, because we started with a new environment, and we wanted to start with a new, fresh environment with this set of rules. As Nish mentioned, we have like around 150 developers, so it's around 15 teams, and unfortunately, not all those teams were following the best practices. So this was the good moment to implement these controls. So how it works? Basically, any commit that doesn't comply with a control policy is rejected. But we don't just reject this commit without all necessary information. Of course, so each reject message contains information like which commit was rejected, and additionally there is a link to a Confluence page which shows how a user can fix this problem. To implement those controls, we decided to use custom pre-hooks, and that's because our requirements was very specific, right? So few controls we were able to do with building pre-hooks, but most of those are made with as a custom pre-hooks. Yes, so one of the key aspects in that case is to provide the self-help guide. Because every time when some commit is rejected, user has to fix this problem, right? So they cannot rely only on us. They cannot ask us every time how to fix it. They can simply go to the documentation in Confluence page and see how to fix the problem. Yeah,
so you make them read. I can't believe this.
Yes, it was possible. I don't know how, but yeah, it's possible to make them read. Yes, so that's basically it. Why we decided to implement those controls.
And these controls are not just something that Nishat just makes up. This goes through an approval process, right? Like it's
yes.
not. It's yeah.
Yeah, so I believe Nish is the perfect person to talk about this, because he's usually on the front line. He announced this new controls. So yes, I believe he's the best person to talk about this.
Yeah, Nishat, tell us about how you build these rules.
Yeah, so I mean, the requirements, sort of the need for it, comes from our team, obviously, myself even, right? So when we started, Bitbucket, some of these controls, just from experience, so I had to add them, right? But we also have requests from teams. But once we have that, when we start with Wiki, and then we have a weekly, I believe, architecture design forum. So we attend, and then we present, we discuss, and then there's always comebacks, we go and investigate whatever. And then but obviously before that, we need to know we can do this, right? So within our team, we make sure that we can do this, and then get ratified. We update the wiki. So we are, as I said, we are very big on wiki. So even while it's ratified, we will say that this plugin or this control has been ratified and awaiting implementation. So it's done all properly, above board, if I can say that. Right, so because doing anything that might be perceived as bottleneck, or that's not going to work, right? Because part of all this, the technical part is not hard, right? Because ScriptRunner makes it easy anyway. It's the buy-in, right, from the user. So we need to make sure whatever we do has been rectified.
All right, so these the highlighted words on this page get echoed in the Confluence page. Yeah, this is the page that you're sending people to when they trigger a control, when they run up against a rule. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and all these pages you see, they're the same format, right? So if you just go back, I can explain and part of the story. So this is all about story, making a story, right? Having defined pages, following the same format sends the right message, that we are serious about this, right? Please read. And also one of the things we have done with this page is very short and concise, right? We avoided completely long sentences. For example, we have used a lot of screenshots, right? In the format, every page follows this format, right? So we start with the control name, which reflects what's in Bitbucket also when we set it up. And what's the rule? What does this control actually enforce? And then we put the status. So normally to start with to be ratified, and then once it gets ratified, then it will move to be implemented. So that takes a few weeks until we have time to do this. And then once it goes active, and before we go active, by the way, we will put a banner in Bitbucket well in advance for about a week, and then point to this page in Wiki, right? So the users knows exactly that is coming. And also I attend our management meeting every week. I will also publicize there, says, look, this is coming, so be careful. And then we obviously provide rationale. So that I got first-hand feedback about this rationale. Somebody told me, Nish, well, now I actually appreciate you have told us exactly why you're doing this, right? So that's a big key, right? Key to the message. After that, we definitely show some examples, good and bad examples. So that's quite useful for the user. And then what the user needs to do to be compliant of this control, right? What day to day, what they need to make sure so they don't fall, they don't breach the control. And then we got the resolution, what exactly they need to do, how to fix it. And of course, finally, we have the exact error message that comes out of the Git client, which then points to the wiki page. So all pages 100% follow this format, and it seems to be working quite well.
Yeah, I think it looks great. And I was joking about making the devs read, because if you just have a list like this, it seems like you can get your information pretty quick.
Yeah.
All right. So 2 seconds, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment because I've lost my presenter view and I can't see where I'm going. That's a good time. There's really nothing like doing it live, folks. Really nothing like it.
Yeah, why test? Just do it live.
Well, I think that when you present people nothing but a recording the whole time, we run the risk of not having mistakes like this. And what fun is that? My apologies, everybody. On with the show. All right. So Tomas, tell us about some of the ways that you have gotten success implementing these controls.
Yes. So as Nish mentioned, that first we put a banner, right, in Bitbucket. So usually people who visits the Bitbucket site, they can see this message and they can go to the Confluence page and see what we plan to change, right? Of course, each our controls are implemented with kind of grace period. So the first few weeks, we only display information about what and why will be rejected. And additionally, we put there the link to a Confluence page so people can, again, they can go there and they can check the documentation and they can see what will change. Of course, we are aware that life is not perfect. So yes, that's why we decided, we know that people sometimes they have to do something in kind of emergency mode, right? So that's why we decided in our commit message control to accept push with emergency word, right? Unfortunately, we know that people maybe use it too often, and not only for emergency situations, but we have kind of idea how to fix it, right? And same with our file size control. So we can add exceptions for some specific extensions, because some of our teams produce bigger files, and we have to allow them to push those files to a Bitbucket. So another key thing is that you have to involve your dev teams, and before we start work on the new control, first we discuss it with our dev teams, and they are involved from the very beginning of this process, right? So we are listening them, and we usually in some way we adjust those controls to their needs. So when you follow those rules, it's much easier to overcome the resistance to change, because people usually don't like change, especially when they have to implement when you implement some controls and they have to change their behaviors, they have to do things in totally different way. But when you provide the self-help documentation, when you involve developer teams in this process, this is much easier to overcome this problem. Yes, so we are also aware of that, that sometimes we have to disable our controls. Basically, we do this only when users are migrating the code from other source code software. So we don't care about the legacy stuff, except of file size and binaries control. Those controls are always enabled, and we never disable it. If people have a problem with binaries, we have very nice documentation, step-by-step guide how to remove those binaries from your repository. And obviously, you need to be consistent. Of course, it is worth to listening to other users' comments because they are mostly affected by the new control, right? So you have to listen them and try to adjust those controls, but exceptions should be rare. They shouldn't be a norm in that case. Yep, and that's all.
Yeah. Well, it seems like these control, they know they're coming in advance. They get plenty of warning. Hopefully they read the email, and even then, after you've given them all this time, you still, on the first, when the things go live, there's still some leeway. You're still being gentle. It's very nurturing.
Yes, we have quite a lot of new tickets in our queue every time when we implement new control. That's that's normal. We are used to it. But we don't only rely on the documentation, right? So we are always ready to jump on a call, help someone, show him how to fix this problem, talk about this control. So it's not only like, we are not like a some kind of chatbot who sends only the link to a documentation and fix it. we are helping, yes.
Ryan, yeah, just one point that how like we are very kind of customer focused, user focused. So part of this, which is not mentioned here, we actually wrote a script in PowerShell to do two things: to get all the binaries and large files, right, and also another script to actually clean it up. So we not only we put the controls, but then we just don't leave the users alone, right? So now it's your problem to clean up, right? We provide very simple tools. They can just run the tool, and you'll tell them exactly where the binaries and what binaries and in which large file, and then actually can fix it before they push. So we plan to publicize that. We've got now in GitHub, we've got our own space now for StoneX. So in the future, we might publish that script, but that script goes and looks what the binaries are, and that's proven very useful, right? So we don't only put controls, but we help the teams, to get to where they want, right? Because last thing you want is, yeah, we've got a control, but you're down to you how to fix it, which doesn't work then, right? That wouldn't have worked.
Man,
and actually the same was for our control for Jira ticket ID inside commit message. So we know that people usually forget to put it and they have to fix this commits. So we implemented another control that checks if you put Jira ID in the branch name, but there was one proposed because we provided the local hook that gets the Jira ID from your branch and puts inside the commit message at the beginning, so you don't have to remember to put the Jira ID every time when you commit changes. So yeah, we also help them.
Yeah, good point, Tom. Because I've been using, recently I've been committing, been doing some scripting, and it's the godsend, especially. So Tom wrote this bash, local hook. And even that is documented fully, by the way. So users can grab it, set it up. And now I've been using it and never have to think about Jira ID. I just do commit and I'm done. Yeah, so it's been godsend, yeah. So that's how we help our users, right? It's not a question of just putting in controls. You really have to be proactive in helping them.
Ultimately, these controls and these best practices that you're implementing are all about being able to visualize information. All that you're doing is making sure that the information is in the right place so that the right people can find it at the right time.
Absolutely.
Right? Well,
yeah, absolutely.
There's more to it than that, but
there's more to it, yeah. But it's for audit purposes also, yeah. So if we can pinpoint this change relates to this ticket, we can go all the way back to our change release, then it's perfect, right? So we can audit trail it all the way back to the source code and to the Jira ticket. So
well, yeah, it's lovely. Let's take a second and see what it actually looks like. Now, this is the portion of the webinar where we are going to play a video because this is some confidential, these screenshots had to be modified to protect the innocent, basically. So we're going to take a look at what the actual experience of working within these controls is like. So I'm going to hit play and we'll see what happens. All right, here we go.
Hello everyone, my name is Tomasz, and in this short video I would like to present you commit Jira ID control. This check was prepared using the ScriptRunner for Bitbucket. As you probably know, ScriptRunner has a built-in pre-hook that allows you to check if a commit message or branch contains a Jira ticket key. In our case, we mainly wanted to verify that each commit message begins with the Jira issue key or the emergency word. That's why we decided to create a custom pre-hook. This pre-hook is triggered by the push and file edit events. Thanks to this, it works both from the console and Bitbucket UI. The code for this solution is available in Adaptavist library, so you can get and adapt it to your needs. Let's see how it works. For this, I will try to push changes whose commit message does not contain the Jira key at the beginning. As you can see, the operation was rejected. The console displays all the necessary information, which commit message was rejected, and link to the Confluence page, which contains all information about that check. On this page, user will find all the information he needs, such as status of control, what is the reason of its use, plus error examples, and finally, how to fix commit message. Let's try to fix our message using the git commit amend command. Jira issue key must be in square brackets at the beginning of the message. Now we can save our commit message and push changes again to Bitbucket repository. As you can see, the changes were successfully pushed to the Bitbucket repository. That's all about this check. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right. And so, really cool, guys. That looks great. That looks like a fairly straightforward, easy experience for the customers, and we definitely want to talk about that. But something that you mentioned in the video, Tomas, this script is available to you right now in the Adaptavist library. So if you are looking to use some of the tricks and tips that Tomas and Nishat have laid out today, or implement the technical part of what they've laid out today, because so much of this has been subtle workmanship. But those are available to you today on the Adaptavist library, where you can also find scripts for ScriptRunner for Confluence, ScriptRunner for Bitbucket, and ScriptRunner alongside other apps in the Atlassian ecosystem. Gentlemen, the customer focus here. JP mentioned something to me, and JP, take it, man.
I mean, I guess it ties in perfectly with this next slide, right? So what you've learned, and I wanted to kind of go back to the beginning because you talked a lot about the user experience and focusing on the people, right? We talk about, when we talk about transformation, people and tools and processes. How what was the first kind of change that you inputted into like that control aspect, and how was the reaction like? Did you guys learn from the very first control you inputted and then kind of built on that?
So I'll take this. Right. So because Bitbucket was fresh, but this was a year ago, so some of these controls I just put them in right from the word go. So I didn't even give a chance, because things like binaries. But at one point I got some pushback from high level because teams are complaining it might take longer to migrate, from GitHub. But I actually bravely, I pushed back too. It was a senior manager, so I politely said, no, let's try first to see where the problems are. Because actually, yeah, it does take time to move binaries out. Deleting is simple, right? Deleting binaries, we just run a couple of tools, but it's actually moving them to like somewhere like in Artifactory, and then you have to rewire your bills and all that kind of things, right? So it does take time, but I did push back. So we tend to do that, right? We're not going to just fall over the first hurdle we cross, right? We always resist and we help the teams out. So we work with the teams. So from the word go, we had some controls in place. Probably the most comes to mind is the Jira ID, right? So we went through a lot of chatting, emailing in the meeting, that architecture design meeting. And then obviously, for example, this word emergency, that wasn't the original word. It was a different word. It was like no Jira. But somebody then commented that, well, that doesn't make sense, right? And then the same issue came, yeah, what if we start misusing emergency, right? So we said we'll deal with that later, right? So we had to compromise. So yeah, so that kind of was our fully fledged, we went through the whole process of going through the motion of rectifying it and implementing it with the Jira ID.
Yeah, and that to me sounds really agile. That sounds like the way to go when you're trying to implement something. You're gonna face some challenges in the way, and the idea is, do you fold, like you said? Do you just go, okay, maybe that's too much, or do you push through and try to make it better? And there's something to be said about making something better instead of just abandoning it. So I think you obviously you made the right choice as what you're explaining us right now. So
Yeah, I mean,
that's really good.
we definitely don't have any regrets. And as I said, ScriptRunner makes it so much easier. I mean, without this, it would have been quite difficult to implement. But just having these controls has made a lot easier for us as a team, because we manage like 8 tools, right? So in terms of support and maintenance, it's made our life easier. We don't have to worry, right, if somebody's going to commit and then go retrospectively and remove the binaries, because you shouldn't do that anywhere, right? I don't want tickets to raise, oh, I forgot to add my Jira ID. Can you fix my commit, please, right? That's not going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome, because it also impacts the amount of work that you guys are doing, because you lower the number of tickets coming in by inputting these controls, and that frees you up to do better things, do more proactive things, which is really good, instead of fighting fires, which we always do in IT.
Yeah, have time to add more control, right? Don't tell my developers.
But what are some of the benefits that you've reaped from installing these? Wow.
Yeah, so definitely it's made less impact on us, right? So in terms of support day to day, it means less of an issue for us, and having those wiki pages that has helped. But still, I mean, we do engage with developers on a daily basis, because some people don't have just time, and we recharge. Our team is very user centric, very user, and I push for that. So that's one thing, and we as a team, we project that we are serious about it, right? So that has made a big difference, because when somebody comes and pushes back, they know what we are talking about, right? We can show and prove that this has benefited us, right? Like especially like something like binaries. We don't want to down the line 2 years come, oh, I've got too much binaries in my repository, please help, and start deleting and all that. So we are looking way ahead in time, right? We don't want to get to that situation. And also, as a side kind of effect, we as a team with the developers, we have kind of engaged more, right, on a daily basis. I get chatted literally every hour, let's say, help. In fact, today only, just before I joined, I helped two developers, to push. So we had to disable, because they're doing a first push, right? And in a way that has brought my team closer to the developers, right? So that has helped definitely. We communicate, we talk. It's not like demanding stuff, right? So that's another aspect which we didn't expect, right? But one more subtle thing, which I never thought of, is that when I do PR review, when I'm reviewing Tom's code, I have to book my time, right? It can take 20 minutes. And before having this Jira ID, I would message Tom, Tom, you Jira ID, please, I want to book my time. And then you respond back, right? So I'm affecting him. But now, no need, because every PR has got the Jira ID in the commit message. So I can look at it, click, and just book my time. So that was quite nice, right? So that has made a real impact to me.
Yeah. And that same sort of philosophy can definitely benefit a lot of folks. So if for the admins out there on the call today who are thinking about starting to implement some controls in their Bitbucket, give them the rundown. How would you go about making this happen in your instance?
Yeah. So sorry, Tom, do you want to take it, or shall I continue? Tom, I don't
sure, I can take it.
Yeah.
So at first you have to think what kind of control you need, and if you do you need those controls, right? So that's the first. Second thing is that you have to document it and standardize it and formalize it. You obviously have to involve your dev teams in this process. You cannot just think about some control, implement it, and then wait for the new tickets in your queue, right? You have to talk to your developers. You have to establish the go live date, so that has to be clear for them when you implement this control. And another aspect is that you have to test those controls in your test environment. So usually when before we implement this, we at first we do the test in our test environment, and we test in different tools. So we check how it works in, let's say, Git is a Git, right? So we just run the Git in some tool like PowerShell command or your CMD. It doesn't matter, but we usually test it in all those tools, and also in IDEs, right? So in developer environments. So as I said before, you have to inform your users about this. You have to announce them. So announcement banner is a very good place to do this. But the problem with Bitbucket is that people usually don't visit the web page. Most of the work is done on their laptops, right? So it's good to also implement this grace period to display this message, like what will be implemented, and provide a link to documentation. Yeah, and then you can go live, and you can wait for a new tickets probably, and for new messages on your chat, right? Obviously, sometimes even when you do all those tests, you test this new control in on all tools. Sometimes there is some bug which has to be fixed very quickly. So we are ready to that. Usually, when someone reports any problem, we just get this script. We fix it. We fix this problem. And obviously we test it properly, same as before, and then we can go live with a new version. Obviously, if there is a need, we update the documentation, what was changed, and that's basically it.
Fine. Just one additional point. So I mean, this has definitely benefited us. So right, if anybody is thinking, look into it, I definitely recommend that you should have some control, at least especially the GRID in the binary. So binary actually has yes, one thing is that it removes decreases your size of your repository, and the clone time is quicker. But actually, there's a very strong reason why we did that, because binary must come from one source. So like we use Artifactory, which then channels through NuGet.org or Maven Central, right? And the reason is because then you can do security scanning, right? So if somebody commits your binaries in your source control, then you can't do that step, right? You can't govern what third party, so it's actually a security risk doing that way, because we don't know if you can add a binary to your repository. We don't know where that binary came from. In fact, we had a problem once, those collisions, right? So somebody was using binaries, same name, but from different places, right? And one came, I think, from the source control. And so that's why the very strong reason why we reject binaries, apart from just simply the size, right? So now all our binaries, we insist they have to come from Artifactory, from NuGet.org. So then we can scan, because we also scan our third-party binaries before it even reaches to our environment. So that's a very strong reason.
Nice. The security in there is the thinking about security in there is really nice. All right, guys, it is time for questions and answers. Now we've got 2 on deck already, and these are great. I love both of these questions. So, and thank you both so much for taking the time to share this story and your wisdom and your experience with us. This has been great. So the first question is from Tom, and they ask, I have employees that want to do one pull request for multiple projects or repos. Any way to do that?
Sorry, can you repeat? One pull request?
One pull request for multiple projects or repos.
Right. So I'm not sure. Does it mean? I mean, this is mostly a Git question. If you have multiple repositories and you want to have one PR, no, you can't, as far as I know. Each PRs are based on a per repository. So when you raise a PR, it's on a repository. So
I'm not sure if it's possible to do pull requests across the repositories. I've seen something in Bitbucket API related to that. So maybe it's possible. actually, because you can check
not
if the
only,
repository is across the repository. So
yeah, but not from the GUI, I think, Tom. There's no way you can do. You raise request PRs.
I've never tried, to be honest,
Yeah,
so I cannot answer.
Yeah,
I don't think
I mean, you
it's possible.
could.
I've not heard of it.
Yeah, one way around would be to you write a script which then you know about the repositories, and then you can automate that.
Robert?
No, I was just going to say I don't think it's because I think it's, well, particularly from the UI, because when you create a pull request, you create that pull request from a branch in the UI, right? So
Yes.
it's based on that branch is coming from one repository. So it's not something I'm familiar with, unfortunately, whether that is or isn't possible. It's a very interesting question though. I kind of see what they're wanting, because they've got code in basically multiple repositories and projects split over sort of in a modulated state, and wanting the pull request to cover those different aspects, I think, in one pull request. So I kind of understand the question in terms of the need for it, but I'm not sure it is possible. And I don't even know if it would be possible with ScriptRunner. But yeah.
Challenge accepted, Robert.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Tom, for that question. It was a great one. This next one is from Peter, and I also think this is really good. Peter asks, does the script that you showed verify that the Jira ID is a valid ID?
Very good question.
Yet.
Yeah. Not yet. It's coming.
Not yet.
Not only that it's valid, we are going to check that it's in the right state. So because there's no pointless committing to a closed Jira ticket, right? So that's in the pipeline. We'll definitely check. Now that has challenges, because when you're doing it locally, right? But that's Tom's problem. He's going to think about that, not my problem. I just right? So I just demand, right? And it should happen. So challenge is that how do you then, if you're going to connect to the REST API in Jira, how do you store that credentials? So there are some ideas. I've got some, and Tom probably has some ideas. So we can
credentials. Actually, it's not a problem, because ScriptRunner has this very nice functionality when you can use the current user credentials to do the REST call from ScriptRunner to Jira, let's say. And I believe we use it. We use it in Jira with some kind of integration with Confluence, and it works very well, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, actually, I was thinking, so that definitely after you push, or when you're pushing. But I was also thinking, locally. So when you're committing, because if you start committing with the same Jira over and over, and they're all wrong, then by the time you get to the push, you're going to have a problem, right? You'll have so many commits. So I think there's two. We can fix this in two different places. Yeah, definitely Bitbucket when you push, but it will be also helpful locally, where you can, as you're committing, then it checks at that point. Yeah. So we have plans.
All right. Now, will you be sending that bit of the script over to the Adaptavist script library when it's done?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we got. As I said, we use ScriptRunner. I mean, Tom is the specialist, not me, right? I mean, Tom with Jira, we do much more, tons of automation, right? And we have, in fact, recently Tom did integration between Jira and Bitbucket. So he now, from Jira, you can control. We hook into Bitbucket, and this, depending on what state we have branches, whatever, we will then either reject or allow the commit, right? So all good stuff. So we're going to definitely, hopefully, share, via this forum again, hopefully, or we can share it differently in GitHub. I guess we have plans to do that too, right? So definitely, yeah.
Awesome. We have a question from Peter that I think is interesting. I think we've already kind of covered it, but maybe we can go deeper into details. But question is, does your set of rules force engineers to always have a Jira issue to push anything? And and I guess the one I'm also interested in mostly is, was that tough to convince them of this?
Tom, you want to take this?
Oh, I will leave it to you, because, as I said, you are the person who's on the front line with developers. So
Yes. So definitely, user definitely needs a Jira ID for sure, or you can use the emergency tag. Either one obviously will work. At the moment, as I said, somebody could put ABC. You saw Tom in the demo, right? So we don't check that the Jira, but every user must have a Jira ID before they can commit, push, right? Sorry, what was the second part, JP?
The second part was how difficult was it to convince everybody? And you did kind of mention that you got some pushback at first, but like give us a bit more in the story there.
Yeah, so I was definitely involved heavily with this Jira ID. Luckily, that kind of it partly came from development team, right, from the senior managers. So it was a bit easier to convince. Where we slightly got some issues was the word emergency and whether we need it, right? I actually pushed back. I said, look, if it takes you half a minute to create a Jira, you don't have to put any details. You know, you can easily create the Jira, right, and then use that in your. Even if your server is down, you need to fix it. I'm sure you can create, but I think we compromise, right? They said, fine, let's allow that, you know, to put in. But day to day, like for example, only recently I got a pushback about the Jira ID again, right? And because somebody committed Jira ID without the square bracket, so this happened this week only, right? But the reason they managed to commit, so he didn't commit that commit ID. Somebody else did when he merged his stuff from the user, from the master plan. He got a commit without the square bracket. So we were baffled. Wow, how did he manage to commit that in the first place? Well, what happens is we do disable our controls when somebody does the first push. It just so happened that user last week pushed a change during that period, and we only temporarily disabled, like for a half a minute, right? But then that had a knock-on effect on the team. They couldn't now push because Git will see that as a commit as part of somebody who's, you know, because he did a merge, right? So, and he wasn't happy actually. He said, why am I getting affected where somebody else has committed it, right? So I have to explain. And then to help that user, I actually said, look, you can use this local hook that we have done, that Tom mentioned. And actually it started kind of, I've been in a kind of a bad mood. I wouldn't say bad mood, but he was quite disgruntled. And by the time we finished, he was laughing and smiling. I said, oh, this is good, right? I can use this local hook, right? So brilliant, right? That's how we kind of encourage teams, right? That, you know, this is not a big deal. That please, you know, please work with us. You know, that's the message you always send. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, guys, I do want to point out that we are at time, and I want to be respectful of our colleagues' times. And I know that that the moment all of you open Slack, you're going to be getting lots of requests from your developers. But if you can stay for a couple of minutes, if you can. There's one more question, and I think it would be worth throwing at you. Everyone else, you are welcome to drop off at any point. But you guys okay to take one more?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
All right. Fantastic. Hwasun Sim asks, what happens if someone pushes multiple commits with large files in a push? Will the validation time out?
So,
I'm just thinking.
No, not from our experience. We have tried. So we have. I think, Tom, we haven't seen that, right? So normally, when
not really.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, that normally happens during first push, by the way, right? Because that when you first push, you got a lot of commits and possibly you might have files. So where the ScriptRunner runs is it runs each Git command. Because Git is Git, right? It takes few commands to get the history out, to actually get the file size. So this is one control that we use from from ScriptRunner. We haven't engineered it ourselves, right? And Ryan, I remember raising a ticket on you guys because first push I realized it was taking longer than normal, right? So then I thought, oh, why is that? And I did raise a ticket on you guys, and you came back very quickly and explained this is what happens. Right, because you have to run Git command on every file, right? So our experience is it's never expired, it's never timed out, and in the first push, because in the first push we never disable the binary control and we never disable the large file control. Only occasionally we do because of VPN issues, right? It's never timed out ever, and I believe the experience I've heard is people have run it for 2 hours. The Git command just sits there. An hour and a half, 2 hours, it never timed out. So I think it's pretty safe. Yeah.
It's sort of fun to watch a Git command just sit there and you just have to walk away. Yeah,
Yes,
right.
and actually, in this particular instance, when it took hour and a half, I felt pity on the developer. I said, wait, kill that command. I'm just going to just prove it to me that you have did the check for binaries large file. So one of these tools that we have written actually outputs a HTML file. Also, it outputs on the screen. It will tell you there's binary. So he showed it to me, right? It's not that we don't trust, just to make sure,
Yeah,
right?
you got to do your job.
Yeah. Once he proved it, I went and disabled it. Within about a minute, he managed to commit done, right? So
Nice.
yeah, yeah. And the reason is there's no danger, because even if they, let's say they by mistake some binaries got in, well, they're not going to be able to update it, because next time when they do try to update it, they'll be blocked anyway, right? So there was that kind of danger, right? The only problem is if they want to clean it, then they have to clean it, change the history, then you have to use force to push, and everybody then gets affected, right? Especially if it's the developer master branch, right? All the people who are using the repository, they have to do an update, right? A force update or a reclone for that matter, right? So it's not a big deal the first time if you do let it go, right? But yeah, but it doesn't time out, definitely. At least we haven't seen Git timing out, for sure.
All right.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I was just going to add that if anybody on the call is experiencing any performance issues with ScriptRunner for Bitbucket, then please do get in touch, via the support forum and other channels available to you, in order to, because obviously we want to hear from customers if they are having performance issues. I'm not aware of this timing out, but yeah, if anybody's got running Bitbucket instances and they feel they're getting performance issues like this from ScriptRunner for Bitbucket, then absolutely do get in touch with us, and so we can actually help you guys out and and improve the product in that way. So
yeah, so the only one we found, Robert, is, and that's not fault of Adaptavist by any means, right? It's just because the file size, because you have to make a couple of calls into Git to get the file size. So if you're during your first push, you have 1,000 files, whatever, then obviously it's going to take long, right? So but day to day, once the repository is pushed, then we have never seen issues ever with ScriptRunner. It just works out of the box.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate everyone's time, especially to Nishat Rajabali and Tomasz Brija. Thank you so much for sharing your lived experience in these tools, helping your teams communicate better and helping your company stay compliant in the financial industry. That's a lot of work, and the way you approach it is just wonderful. So we're gonna wrap the webinar for today. For Robert Giddings, JP Komu, Nishat Rajabali, and Tomasz Brija, I'm Ryan Spilkin, and reach out to us at Adaptavist if we can further help you with anything. Look for the scripts on the library, and have a great rest of your week, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.